So about 10 years ago, I met someone who was switching careers to production, and I was curious and I asked them why they were switching departments. And immediately their very quick response was, because I want to be the boss. And that gave me the ick then, and I still feel that now. And over the years, I've seen him move up in production all the way up to producing. But fast forward to today, and he's no longer in production. I'm sharing this story because I want to begin by debunking the thought that production makes you the boss. You are not. Production is first and foremost a supporting role. We are here in service of others. Yes, production is a leadership role, but there is a difference between leading by helping others and clearing the path so that they can move towards the common goal than being a leader just so you can boss someone around or tell people what to do. So if you're considering production just for an ego boost or a power trip, you've got this wrong. So in today's camp, I will share the common things that people get wrong about production by breaking down what production really is in a VFX or animation pipeline. So you want to be prod. If you're new here, my name is Frances, your forever friend in prod. I've been a production coordinator for pretty much every single department in a pipeline. I've been a production manager. I've worked in VFX and in animation, and I've worked in feature films and episodics. Throughout those years, I've trained over 100 production staff, and eventually I created So You Want to Be Prod to keep spreading support for production. This video is part of a 5-week production camp, Production-101, where I'll be covering the fundamentals of production management in VFX and animation. For today's agenda, we'll be covering what production is. By the end of this camp, my goal for you is for you to have an understanding of what production is in a VFX and animation pipeline. And to do that, these are the chapters we'll be covering. We're going to cover the many definitions of production, what a pipeline is, we'll talk about why production exists, I'll go over the 3 pillars of production, something that no one talks about at school or at work, and of course the roles and responsibilities of production assistants and production coordinators, as well as other production roles that you might come across in your life in production. Alrighty. Hopefully you're all set up, you've seen the orientation so you know what to expect, you were able to access the course page without issues, and you've done your gear check so you have all the materials that you need. But if you didn't know, all of our summer camp videos has a complimentary course page that you can use to follow along. And each one will have free course materials that you can download to supplement all the lessons that we cover. All of which is free to access by clicking on the link down below or scanning this QR code. And I highly recommend you following along with the course page just because in the interest of time, we might not be able to cover everything that I want to share in one video, but I still really want you to have that information handy. So at least if you have the course page handy, you have those notes with you. Also, it's free. So a bit of a time check, we'll aim for this to be about 45 minutes. Note that there is a 5-minute break in between, and that is intentionally cut in this video. And in the end, if you still have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on our Discord, or you can wait until our live Q&A at the end of the summer. Now 45 minutes sounds a lot, but we'll be covering a lot. So be sure to stay with me, especially for production assistants or production coordinators who are new to production or are thinking of applying for production roles, because towards the end, I will be going over the roles and responsibilities of production assistants and production coordinators. And that information might be helpful to you to see if you would be a good fit for production. Some of that information might help beef up your resume. Chapter 1. The many definitions of production. So the confusing thing about production is that the word production is used to mean different things. In this video, I'll cover 4, but there's actually more. Later on, I will do a separate video where I'll go over the other definitions of production, but for this video, we'll stick with 4. Okay, so the breakdown. So first, production as a department. So this is the production team, sometimes prod for short. And it is the core project management team of the show. Usually it consists of production assistant, production coordinator, production manager, and producer. Now I will caveat that different studios have different preferences for titles and hierarchies, it could vary from studio to studio. So you'll hear others like production supervisor or line producer, digital producer. So it just depends on the studio. The production team is often associated with the admin role of the team. So we're talking about schedule, crewing, emails, setting up meetings, things like that. But there's going to be so much more. So the production team's role is to facilitate effective communication throughout the project. So we distribute internal and external information. So if the project is working with a client, then we communicate information to them and then back to the internal team. And the production department is also responsible for keeping the deliverables on time, within scope, and within budget. As much as possible, that is. All in all, the production team is the supporting system for the rest of the team. Number 2, production as a body of knowledge or a discipline. So in film and TV, production is synonymous to project management, but it's not exactly one-to-one. For my PMI trained people, show production usually leans more towards predictive project management style than agile, but it's not one-to-one. And to be honest, I think it's a little bit of both. So it's kind of a hybrid. Experience in production means you exhibit skills pertaining to the ability to plan, execute, maintain products or deliverables while managing multiple teams and resources, again, through effective communication and within the constraints and scope of a specific show. If those are a lot of unfamiliar words, please don't panic. If you have the course page open, there is a glossary down below that you can open up, or you can access Sewing with Prod's Word Bank, the complete production glossary, over here. The third one is the production as a deliverable, so the show itself. A deliverable is any product or service from a project. The word production can sometimes be used interchangeably to mean the show itself or the project itself. Sometimes people say production to mean the show or the project or the result. So it's like me saying working in a Star Wars production would be a dream. Hint, hint. So that's production as a deliverable. The fourth one that I'll go over is production as a phase. So for example, you'll hear things like pre-production, production, post-production. Those are just different stages in the life cycle of a show, which we'll be talking about in a later episode. Some people use it to mean just a specific phase or stage in the whole process, but sometimes people also use it to mean the whole thing from the beginning to end. So fun stuff. So to recap, production can sometimes mean 1, the department or the people. It can mean the discipline or the body of knowledge. Production can mean the show or the deliverable, or production can also mean a phase. Again, those are only 4 of the other definitions that exist out there, because sometimes they also use production to mean the crew on set, the client is production, or sometimes they use it as a descriptor of a job title that has nothing to do with the production department. It exists. But the main takeaway here, and if you're going to remember one thing from the definition, is that production is here to support the crew, to support the team. Moving on to chapter 2. What is a pipeline? Okay, seriously, if you still don't have the course page open, you are missing out. Clearly, I've been very inspired by the space launch earlier this year. And let me just say that I had so much fun putting together this analogy of what a pipeline is like. So I hope you're enjoying the graphics or the theme of this year's summer camp, because this one right here is my favorite. So in this chapter, I'll share an example of a pipeline. And I say that because pipelines vary per type, per show, or per studio. Every studio will have a general pipeline that they will follow. A feature film pipeline will differ from the pipeline of an episodic or a series. VFX pipeline will differ from an animation pipeline. And sometimes even within the same studio, every show will have a different type of pipeline. I won't be able to cover the differences between a VFX pipeline and an animation pipeline in this summer camp, but if that's something that interests you, let me know in the comments and I'll add it to the list. In the course page, there is a drop down there that will also list the different departments that you'll encounter, and not all of them will exist in the same show or on the same project. Some of those departments might be called something else in a different studio, but I've listed the common ones there so that you can explore on your own. And I've also listed some abbreviations that you may encounter, especially in ShotGrid, because sometimes when they could condense those department or pipeline steps, you'll notice at the very top, the heading will get abbreviated. And it's just some prod tips that to be aware of. I want a blanket caveat for the rest of the summer camp that I will be referring to flow production tracking as ShotGrid. Who's ready for an adventure? Is that cheesy? I really wanted to say it. So let's explore the pipeline. Okay, so this is an analogy of a typical animation pipeline for an episodics. So we'll go from left to right. The size of the planets are relevant to the size of the team. So in general, you'll see that the assets department and the animation departments tend to be your biggest departments in a pipeline or in a show, and then you're going to be followed by the compositing team. Also, if you'll notice, editorial over here doesn't just stay in one spot. So throughout the pipeline, you're going to see them involved with storyboards when they put the animatics together, and then they're going to be helping out layout and animation, again updating those animatics as the shots progress. And then towards the end, they don't really work much with these people here, but they will work with compositing and again putting the final comps all together in sequences. Okay, so let's start from the left. So in an episodic, you will know how many episodes you will have for that season, and so you'll know how many scripts to expect. But those scripts will come in different phases, and they're not all going to be done all at the same time. So you'll be tracking script readiness throughout the course of the show. As they get closer and closer to polish or lock or the final version of the script, they get passed on to the art department or the design department. This is where you start to see concept art, and then that gets finalized so that you have a model sheet that you can pass on to the assets. So they have a guide on what does it look like from the front, from the side, from the top when modeling creates those assets. And then the art department will also provide information for look dev on what it should look like texture wise or surfacing or shading wise. So art, again, they take the assets that they get from the script. So they do an asset breakdown or a script breakdown, and then art designs those assets, and then storyboards takes the story that script provides, as well as the asset designs that art department provides. And then they're going to start putting together shot designs or storyboards. They will design how the episode will look just based on the story that script provides, and we want that to be within the constraint of the assets that we have per design. And then we have assets. So assets can work simultaneously with storyboards. Assets will take the designs that art department provides, and then they will also look at the animatics. How was that asset used in the boards, right? Because that would give them information on the functionality of the asset. So, and the functionality of the asset will provide rigging information of how to rig an asset. How can this be rigged so that it is usable in layout and animation? They have the controls they need so that animation and layout can manipulate or control the asset, the CG assets, based on the movements that storyboard provides. So this is the assets team. It's a big team, and it's composed of modeling, rigging, and look dev. So look dev has mini moons over here because look dev is a combination of texture artists and shading artists. So altogether, all of that is assets. If you want to learn more about those 3 asset departments, I'll link a video about it down below once that's out. And then we've got layout. So layout then is the first one to take everything from these upstream departments. So upstream means the departments ahead of what the current one is. So layouts upstream are these departments. So layout will take the assets that assets department provides, and then they're the first ones to turn those into 3D shots based on what storyboard provides as a guide. So layout will do some staging. They'll place the cameras. They're essentially the cinematographers of the episode or of the feature film, right? Cameras is their thing, but that's not to say that it will not change. So sometimes, depending on your pipeline, cameras can still change when they pass it to animation. So once the layout has designed those shots, everybody's happy with those animatics or those sequences, then that gets passed on animation. So layout will do a rough pass of the movement, so very blocky animation, and then animation will take those shots that they get from layout being their upstream, so then animation will take those shots further. So, well, for the lack of a better word, they will animate those shots. So depending on your pipeline, there is a department called shot finaling. From what Reddit says, this tends to be just more of like a North America department. It's not a department that's typically seen in other studios, but for those of you who have shot finaling or something similar, so this is a department at the end of animation that's in charge of QC kickbacks or taking some of the final animation and then doing another pass of polish on it before it gets passed downstream. Most studios have animation and they are in charge of from the beginning to the end of that shot. Once animation is done with their shots, then that gets passed on to their downstream department. So that could be matte painting. So matte painting, they are in charge of putting the sky dome or painting the backgrounds. If the environment is too big or too costly to create in CG, right, in assets, then matte painting could possibly help. So it's going back to the traditional roots of matte painting where you're painting a fake background so you don't have to build the whole thing. So that could be another task for matte painting. Or sometimes if the camera is locked, then they also have the ability to paint a certain look that the director could be looking for. That could be just quicker or cheaper to do than sending it back upstream. So matte painting could be down here or it could be over here. But generally matte painting is over here so that they ensure that they have the latest camera, because they are very much dependent on where the camera will be, because they paint on the perspective of that camera. So if the camera changes, matte painting tends to change too. Okay, and then you've got effects. So effects also is after animation, because animation can affect how effects are generated, or if they're interacting with the effects that they generate, then you want the final animation. They can start before final animation, but it would be a work in progress. Because again, you want the final animation before you finalize effects. And then there's CFX and groom. So is it a planet? Is it a moon? We don't know sometimes. I put it over here because some pipelines have CFX or groom as part of effects, but sometimes they don't. So it just depends again on your studio and your pipeline, but CFX and groom, so if you have that department, then chances are effects is more into like the elemental or magic kind of stuff or effects, and then CFX or groom will be in charge of hair, fur, muscle simulation, or wing fluttering, things like that. So things that are more like, I guess you could say, body parts, so creature effects, right? So that is kind of the realm of CFX and groom. Then you've got downstream here is lighting. So very important, all CG will look awful without lighting. Very, very important department. So anything CG needs to go through lighting before it goes to comp. So lighting will make sure that assets appear as intended based on the look dev that provided and the agreed lighting, right? Because if you change the lighting, or if there is no lighting in CG, it looks very, very different, and that is not going to be finalized or approved. So again, all CG needs to go through lighting. Matte painting Matte painting is kind of like in the gray area, right? Because like the sky dome, you need the lighting, but sometimes, depending on what it is, they could also just go straight to comp. It just depends on what it is and what your pipeline is like. But generally, everything CG goes through lighting, and then everything that lighting outputs goes to comp. And then, so you've got comp, and they will put everything together. So they will get all the passes and put it all together, and then they will also put their own comp magic on it. So the final touches. I think of comp like, imagine how before everything gets published in a magazine, everything goes through Photoshop, right? So comp kind of does the same thing. So everything that you see on screen goes through comp first. So they are the last step, along with DI. So not to be forgotten. So once comp has done their magic on those shots, then they're gonna pass it to DI. So actually, everything that you see on your screen goes through DI. So DI is in charge of color. So everything has to go through DI because they need to set the right settings for it to look the way it's intended, depending on what it is being viewed from. So is it going to be viewed from your TV screen? It's going to be viewed from theaters, and they have very specific settings for that. And then, of course, last but not least, you'll see production weaving in and out through all of these departments. We're going to be involved throughout the whole pipeline, helping scripts, designs, boards, assets, shots, go through the whole process. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed that little adventure here on exploring the pipeline. So the whole pipeline itself is fairly linear, but you'll find that there are processes within it that will be cyclical, because you're gonna have to go through processes where you're trying to get things approved, and if they don't get approved, then you need to revise it, and then you send it back again to get approval, and then only after you get approval does it move on to the next phase, right, to your next department or to your downstream department. So yes, it's linear overall, but you'll see it's actually cyclical within it. I hope that makes sense. VFX folks, you'll notice that in the pipeline that I shared, there's no match move or roto paint. That's because those departments are more of a VFX pipeline where you're dealing with live action footage, and you don't really need those in animation. But animation folks, there are times where if it's too late to kick something back upstream, sometimes comp, even in an animation, will do roto work. So it's still something that you should be aware of. Why production exists, purpose of the production department, and the part it plays in production. So now that you've had a better idea of what production is, and you've had a glimpse of what a pipeline is like, you generally have an idea now of what departments do. Let's talk about why production exists. How does production fit in this whole process? Before we dive into the tasks or the roles and responsibilities of production, we first need to understand our purpose. Why do we do what we do? Why is production needed? What is the ultimate goal of production? It'll provide context to why we need to get something done and frame all of our interactions in production. Knowing that will also help you better prioritize and communicate with others. How can production help? Production can help by facilitating communication between stakeholders, making sure that everyone's on the same page and they have the right information. Production can help by planning, scheduling, and executing the steps towards an overall goal. And then production can also help by organizing tasks, materials, and information that the team needs to move forward. Production can help by maintaining the team's alignment towards a common goal, making sure that everyone's on the same page and everyone's in an agreement where we're headed or how we're going to get there. And last but definitely not the least, production can help by supporting the team's well-being. And we'll cover more of that in a later episode, but something to keep in mind that it's not just all numbers, it's not just all deliverables. We're not just working with things or intangible things. We're working with people. And at the end of the day, it's the people who matter. Okay, so common misconceptions about production. Number one, that we've covered this first thing, that production is the boss. Again, being in production does not make you the boss. Number two, another misconception about production is that all production does is emails, notes, data entry, and schedules. Yes, production does all those things, but there's so much more. And again, we'll cover that in later episodes. Another misconception about production is that you can do the job well just by focusing on data. No. Like I said earlier, we work with people all the time. You can't just not interact with them, and you can't just ignore people skills. It's not just about data. Another misconception about production is that it's not an important department. Even though production is not the one who produces the asset or makes the drawing or produces the shot, production's work is in the background. Production's magic is being able to help those people who create things be able to create things. If we go back to our little planetary adventure over here, production is the one that's keeping all of these planets aligned. Production essentially is the gravitational force that keeps all these planets together. So really, I think production is the sun. But I digress. Again, so a common misconception is that production is not important, but I beg to differ because it is very much an integral part of the pipeline. Another misconception of production is that production gets paid more than artists. So this one I wanted to include in case there's anyone who's looking to switch careers from artist role to production. This might be something that you want to consider because historically, production assistant or production coordinator will have a lower range than a junior role on artist role. So really do your research, and if that is something that you need to consider. I do want to caveat that no role is too small. So don't underestimate junior roles. I don't think there's any role that is more important than another. We just have different responsibilities. We just have different roles to play, but all of them are still important. All right, so that was a lot of information all at once. So as promised, here's your 5-minute break. Go stand up, look away from your screen, take a sip of water, go for a bathroom break. Your brain will thank you. The next chapter is gonna be a big one, so definitely take a breather. I'll see you in 5. All right, welcome back. So hopefully that footage was calming. Hopefully I didn't get anyone seasick. There's 3 more chapters to go and we'll jump right in. Chapter 4, the 3 pillars of production. This is a seldom articulated philosophy in production. So what I mean by that is I feel like this is kind of shared in some form or another, but I haven't met anyone who's explained it in this way. So hopefully in this structure it makes sense. Production is not just about the admin work, and it's not just the technical skills, and it's definitely not just the people skills. Production is a combination of all these 3 masteries. You need project management skills, you need domain knowledge or domain skills, and you need people skills or soft skills. To excel in production is to excel in all 3. It's okay if your strength is in one and not the others, but even though you're better at one thing, doesn't mean that you should neglect the others. My main focus in this chapter is that you need all 3. So let's go over what those 3 are. So the first mastery is the project management skills. So what is project management skills? It's a facet of production skills focused on the administrative tasks and the ability to plan, execute, monitor, and deliver a show and its deliverables. So why is that important? It's important because production's role is to support a team by enabling them to communicate information between each other and to help them deliver within a given constraints, right? So project management skills, we need to deliver the project. So what are the steps that we need to take in order for the team to get there? And when is it applied? You will see this applied in calendar management, emails, definitely schedules, meeting setups, notes distribution, and so on. The next mastery is domain skills. So what is domain skills? So domain skills are a facet of production skills that is focused on the understanding of the industry, the pipeline, the departments. It's the technical know-how that is required for you to perform your task. This is the industry knowledge that you need to know to be able to do the job. It's important because an understanding of the jargon and the processes that goes on within film or TV or VFX or animation production is needed to ensure that tasks are done properly, or you know where to look when you need an information, or you know what it is that you're trying to communicate, right? The more you understand the pipeline, the better your notes will be. And that's exactly where it's applied. You will apply this when you're facilitating meetings or discussion, in note-taking, even in conflict resolution and problem solving. So the third mastery is the people skills or soft skills. This is a facet of production skills focused on the strong and effective communication. It's the emotional intelligence and competence and skills needed when you're working with others. Like I said, it's not just about data. We work with people every single hour, every single minute practically. So it's important because production does not work in isolation. If the team didn't exist, there is no use for production. So you have constant interaction with people. So constant interaction is required when you're working with artists, supervisors, clients, even leadership internally, or fellow production teams. So you need people skills. You'll apply this when you're setting targets, providing show updates, when you're presenting, and all forms of communication. So production management is not just one of these 3 facets or philosophies, but it's all 3 together. Now you've made it this far, so I'll let you in another secret. There is a 4th, and it's all-encompassing of all 3, and that is leadership. But that's all I say for now, because we'll cover that in a later episode. Chapter 5, the roles and responsibilities of a production assistant and production coordinator. Before we get started, I want to cover the difference between a task versus a skill. So a task is a specific duty or responsibility expected of a job. It's the thing you do. And a skill is a required knowledge or ability to be able to do a task. So just because you can do a task doesn't mean you're skilled in it, right? So yes, you can do the thing, but what is the skill you need to be able to do the thing properly, or what is the skill you need to excel at doing the thing. I hope that makes sense. As promised, we'll cover the roles and responsibilities of a PA or production coordinator. All right, so let's go over some roles and responsibilities. It's a very, very long list. So if you have the course material, you can download this in the gear pack. It's a very long list. So what I'll share in this video is just a sample. There is also a complete list that you can download that has all of the roles and responsibilities that you can already download for free, but with bonus content listing tips and specific project management skills, people skills, domain skills related to that responsibility. And you can download it in the link below at the end of the summer. It will be a paid product, but it is very, very affordable. It's basically a price of coffee or bubble tea. If you found value in So We Want to Be Prod and the content that we've been sharing, and you would like to support me in some way, I'd really appreciate it. I really love bubble tea. Roles and responsibilities, and to see if production is a fit for you. Let's go from the top. So as a production assistant, you will be managing and maintaining the show calendars. So you might be a good fit if you're a problem solver or tech savvy or you organize. As a production assistant, you will follow through with offboarding tasks. So you might be a fit if your skills include being proactive or you empathetic. As a production assistant, you will relay information and data between departments. So are you a clear communicator? Are you collaborative? As a production assistant or a coordinator, you will type out meeting and review notes. So are you a good listener? Are you a fast typer? Are you inquisitive? As a PA or a coordinator, you will organize team events. So are you fun, personable, resourceful? As a PA or a coordinator, you will facilitate deliveries to clients. So are you professional? Can you stay calm under pressure? Now, as coordinators, you'll be more involved with a little bit more responsibilities than a production assistant. So as a production coordinator, you'll provide asset breakdowns based on your scripts or animatics. So are you familiar with the CG pipeline? So because you have more responsibilities, then more is expected of you. Production coordinators will also help supervisors bid, assign tasks, and set targets. So are you analytical, strategic? Are you structured? As a production coordinator, you will also communicate task statuses and ETAs via ShotGrid. So are you supportive? Are you familiar with ShotGrid? Again, this is a very, very small sample. You can download the full list of roles and responsibilities in the download button on the course page. It is absolutely free. And if you want more content with all of my tips and the related skills for each of those responsibilities, you can download the complete list for a price of a bubble tea. And production coordinators, just a heads up that as a production coordinator, you will typically be assigned 1 to 2 or maybe more departments. It depends on how big of a team you have. And as a coordinator, you will have more focus on those assigned departments than other departments. You should still be aware of your upstream and downstream departments, your related departments, because it affects how you will schedule. But as a coordinator, you're typically partnering with a specific department. You have specific tasks that is more catered to that department that will also go on top of your general production tasks. And for the final chapter, other production roles. So these are the other people who make it all happen. If you click on the course material, there's a couple of drop-down menus there that you can click. So for production roles, this is the typical hierarchy of a production structure. Again, big caveat here, for all of the roles that you see on the course page, these are general roles. These are, you won't necessarily find every single one in your show or your studio even. This is just a collection of everything that I've seen across very many different pipelines. So with production departments roles, a typical hierarchy or production structure is you have your production assistant as the entry level or the runner. Then you'll see production coordinators. Sometimes they're called VFX coordinator, sometimes show coordinator. Some studios will have roles like production supervisor, associate production manager. Then you'll have a production manager that sometimes is like an associate producer in some studios. Then there's a producer, digital producer, line producer, supervising producer, eventually to a head of production. So I've included other production adjacent roles outside of production departments. So if you're already in production, maybe these are other roles that you might want to consider. So these are other operational roles that you might encounter in your life in production. I won't go over them, all of these, but you can click through them on the course page. And of course, other department roles. So you also need to know the roles from in other departments because you need to know who to go to when you have questions. And there are also non-production roles in the course page that you can take a look at. Just because production is part of the job title, it doesn't always mean that they're part of the core production team. I talked about this in more detail in our other course, Land the Job, where I go over non-production roles if you're unsure if the job you found is in the production department or not. And that's it, everybody. I hope you're still here. I hope you're still awake. If not, here's a recap. If you're on the course page, there are some other goodies there for you. You can click on the prod tips. That's a collection of all the production tips I've shared so far. That is condensed to what's relevant to today's lesson. There are additional resources out there, so not just So You Want to Be Prod, but other places that I've seen that have helpful information that you might be interested in, and some FAQs. So if there are questions that I didn't get to answer in this class, you might find them in FAQs, or you might want to leave them in the comments, or you can ask them on our live Q&A at the end of the summer. And if you're new here, we end our days like we end our meetings, with action items. So today's action item is number 1, to introduce yourself on a Discord, the prod chat. It's a lot more fun to do the camp, but with others. You're definitely not alone in this journey, and I think it's going to be a lot more enjoyable if you're sharing ideas or you have questions right now that someone else might be asking too. So join the Discord group, let's chat. And number 2, if any of the departments that I went over interest you, learn something new from that department this week. You can Google them, or if you already work with a supervisor, ask if you can learn more about their day-to-day, what is it they do on a typical day, and then share with the chat. What did you learn new about that department this week? Next week, we're going to be focusing on project management, so make sure to subscribe and click the notification bell to not miss it. Or you can follow us on LinkedIn and Discord for the announcement. And if you don't know already, So You Want to Be Prod has a mission of spreading more support for production departments everywhere. And you can help the mission by sharing one of these resources to someone who might need it. I hope you learned something new today that you could use to help someone else. Because at the end of the day, your greatest resource is each other. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Take care, and I'll see you on day 2. Bye!